Let's change your results the next time you go take that real estate exam. We're going to cover 14 questions on the topic of transfer of title. When you go take the PSI real estate exam, there are 6 questions out of 80 on the salesperson exam, 6 questions out of 75 on the broker exam. As we go through the 14 questions, you will have the opportunity to pause, figure out whether you can get to the answer, and then come back and review what the answer is because we're going to tell you why. Let's get started with question 1 that reads, a buyer discovers an undisclosed easement that allows a neighbor to use part of the property's driveway. What's the most appropriate next step? A. Demand the seller to remove the easement. B. Obtain a detailed property survey. C. Ignore the easement as it is common. D. Withdraw the offer immediately. A buyer discovers an undisclosed easement. So you discover it. The next step out of the ones provided here is get a survey. Question number 2. What does delivery and acceptance of a deed signify in real estate? A. The physical transfer and acceptance of the deed. B. The drafting of the deed. C. The notarization of the deed. D. The recording of the deed. Sometimes the question will give you the answer. It has the word acceptance, so you matched it up with answer A. Delivery and acceptance is where all the things that we need to check that are valid on the deed are present, and then it has been delivered and accepted by the buyer. So here, the one that makes sense is the physical transfer and acceptance of the deed. I'm going to highlight option C, the notarization of the deed. In case you see the question presented differently, that is known as acknowledgement, where we're confirming the grantor's signature. Question number 3. How does foreclosure affect a homeowner's ability to transfer title? It prevents any transfer until debt is cleared. It allows transfer only to the lender. It temporarily suspends title transfer. D. It requires court approval for transfer. The question again, how does foreclosure affect a homeowner's ability to transfer title? The bank wants to clear that debt, so it prevents any transfer until debt is cleared. And that could be done again when they do the foreclosure and get their money back. I believe this is question number 4. In a real estate transaction, what role does a deed play? A. Describes the property boundaries. B. Determines property taxes. C. Transfers title from seller to buyer. D. Lists property restrictions. What role does a deed play? It is to transfer title, the rights, from the seller to the buyer. A. That is going to be a survey, and there are 3 methods. We have a video that you're able to review on that, or rather it's known as legal description, whether it's meets and bounds, government survey, or lot and block. Determines property taxes, that's going to be through the assessment, and then listing the property restrictions either because of easements or encumbrances, that's going to be spelled out on the deed. But the main feature of the deed, that piece of paper, is to transfer title, rights, restrictions from the seller to the buyer. Let's go through question number 5. What action must occur for the transfer of ownership in a real estate transaction to be legally effective? A. Inspection approval. B. Signing of the purchase agreement. C. Buyer's final approval. D. Recording of the deed. Here you're seeing the same question, or the same content being reviewed multiple times, different ways. It is recording of the deed. Question number 6. What does equitable title in real estate signify? A. Full ownership of the property. B. Right to access the property. C. Ownership without legal title. D. Interest of the buyer under contract. What does equitable title mean in real estate? This is what you have once the seller has accepted the buyer offer, so you're under contract. That is the right that gives you access to the property. And for some to sell and or assign those rights to someone else, you get legal title once the deed has been delivered and accepted by the buyer. I hope you're doing okay. If you need further assistance, check out the resources that we have on trainingwithbrenda.com. After making an offer on a property, a buyer is informed by the seller that asbestos was used in the construction of the property. What is the most appropriate next step for the buyer? A. Request a professional asbestos inspection. B. Cancel the offer immediately. C. Proceed with the purchase as planned. D. Ask the seller to remove asbestos. So you're making an offer. You've been informed about it. Now what? The best option out of the ones provided would be, hey, have somebody inspect it. Because asbestos, yes, it is linked to some health issues, but if it is encapsulated and it's not being disturbed, then some people might decide to move forward. The best option here is A, request a professional asbestos inspection. In a real estate transaction, what are prorations typically used for? Dividing the cost of home inspections, allocating property taxes and utility bills, splitting the real estate agent's commission, determining the buyer's down payment amount. You have 5 seconds. We read the question again. In a real estate transaction, what are prorations typically used for? Proration. This is where we're trying to determine how much is supposed to be paid and by whom. The entire bill was paid. Now a portion of it needs to be paid. And so here, most of the times of the choices provided, it will be property taxes. The seller potentially has paid for 6 months or a year. And if the property is being sold anytime in between that, then the buyer is going to owe the seller the remainder of the property taxes and utility bills if applicable. We're doing good. Next question. What does statutory redemption allow a borrower to do after foreclosure? A. Repurchase of the property. B, remove all liens on the property. C, apply for a new mortgage. D, challenge the foreclosure in court. Here, the way I remember this one is looking at the alphabet. Equitable redemption, equitable starts with the letter E, that is before the foreclosure or the tax sale. Statutory starts with the letter S for statutory, that is after the foreclosure. So this is what would allow the person to get back the property, repurchase the property is the answer. Guess where we are? We are at question number 10. So we have 4 more to go. Question 10. A seller has owned a property for a limited time and wishes to provide assurance for that period. What type of deed is most appropriate? A, quitclaim deed. B, bargain and sale deed. C, special warranty deed. Or D, general warranty deed. Take some time to review it. You're the seller, and you only want to provide assurances to the buyer for the time that you had the property. This is going to be special warranty deed. That's the one that covers only 2 promises. I own the property, I'm able to sell it to you, I have title, I can transfer it to you, and I'm only providing assurance for the time that I owned that particular property. This is question 11. A buyer discovers a significant title defect after signing a contract to purchase a property. What is the most appropriate next step? A, negotiate a lower purchase price. B, cancel the contract immediately. C, seek legal advice to address the defect. D, proceed with the purchase as planned. Buyer discovers there's an issue after they've already signed it. So now you need to figure out what to do. The best choice here is to seek legal advice to address that defect. I know some of you might jump to cancel the contract here. You're being asked which one is the best step, which one has the most weight for the buyer, and that would be to seek legal advice. This should be question 11 or 12. I've lost count. What is the primary purpose of conducting a title search in a real estate transaction? A, to verify the property's zoning status. B, to uncover any defects or liens on the title. C, to inspect the physical condition of the property. D, to determine the property's market value. Why do you do a title search? It is to uncover any issues that might affect the rights that you, the buyer, are going to be getting. C, inspect the physical condition of the property, that is labeled as the home inspection. D, to determine the property's market value, that's usually through valuation and appraisal. Let's check out the next question. An individual wishes to quickly transfer property ownership to another party without providing any warranties. What type of deed is most suitable? You've seen these choices before. Special warranty deed, general warranty deed, bargain and sale deed, or quitclaim. So an individual wants to transfer the property. You're the owner, you want to transfer it, you don't want to provide any promises in the future to do with the title. It would be quitclaim. If a property is being sold under a land contract, when does the transfer of ownership become effective? A, after the buyer makes the first installment payment. B, when the land contract is recorded in public records. C, upon the signing of land contracts by both parties. Once the buyer has paid in full according to the contract terms. For some, we might be reviewing what in the world is a land contract. Land contract, installment contract is another word for it. I'm going to use the example of layaway. You go to the store, it's the holidays, and you put it on layaway, and layaway simply is what? You're going to put a deposit for it to be held for you, and then you'll go back and make installments, and you'll only get that thing when you have paid it in full. Same thing in real estate, where the owner has sold it to this individual who's going to live in the property. They got a deposit, and this individual is going to pay installments to the seller, owner financing, and they will only get ownership to that property when they have done what? Paid it in full. So the answer here to this question, if a property is being sold under a land contract, when does the transfer of ownership become in effect or become effective? It's once the buyer has paid it in full according to the contract terms. Check out Training with Brenda for more resources. I'll see you next time.